now German, Italian, and English very well. And he plays the piano like nobody's business. And he's also gets a chance to conduct. So as he's coaching the singers, he's working with them. And then once in a while, they'll toss him a bone and he gets to conduct the orchestra. That's sort of one route. Another route, another student of mine actually has a position now, but it's been shut down. He's in a town called Flensburg, which I've never heard of. It's very close to the Danish border. And he was about to get started. He actually had a performance he was supposed to do. So hopefully sometime in this year, he'll be able to resume his job. So that's the only real standard way to get a position with an orchestra, through the opera route. That's sort of more of an older route. And for me, I probably mentioned this last time, but I was a clarinet performance major. I was at Rutgers University for one semester and decided that music is really what I wanted to do. Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And second semester, my first year, I wound up at the Manhattan School of Music as a clarinet major, and soon discovered that the clarinet, you have to worry about reeds and mouthpieces and ligatures and barrels and bells and mechanisms and various things which are not all terribly interesting to me. So I decided to take the easy route and become a conductor. Well, not really, but and I wound up getting my performance degree in clarinet. And the idea with me, though, is if I didn't make it as a conductor, I'd be a teacher. So I took thank God, I shouldn't really say this, but the master's program in Manhattan School of Music was 1 year. And I was very fortunate because I didn't want to do 2 years in music education. And I was a bit of a wise guy then, because I had played clarinet, flute, saxophone. I had dabbled in bassoon, oboe. I had worked on the viola, had started piano, and I didn't want to spend 2 years doing music education. So like I said, I was a wise guy. And fortunately, it was only one program, a 1 year program, so it became a moot point. So I wound up getting my master's degree in music ed. And I was a student teacher at Music and Art High School. And how many of you have seen, well, not everybody is visible, but those of you who I can see, how many of you have seen the movie version of Fiddler on the Roof? Okay, good. The girl who plays the third sister, the one who plays Chava, I guess, was a student of mine when I was a student teacher at the high school at Music and Art High School, which is around City College of New York in the 130s in New York. So I did my student teaching, I was done with it. And all this while I was playing the clarinet and the saxophone for weddings and bar mitzvahs in the New York area. And then I wound up teaching 1 year at Portchester Elementary School. I was an elementary instrumental music teacher for a year. And then the following year, I did a semester for someone who's taking leave at a junior high in band in the Bronx, around Pelham Park. Around Pelham Parkway in the Bronx, you know where that is? And then a semester is teaching strings in the South Bronx, where I was never sure my car would be there when I came out of the school. Just telling you like it is. And then friends, colleagues said to me, listen, you can always go back and be a school teacher, but this is your shot. You need to be a conductor, or at least see if you can be a conductor. And then if you can't make it, go back and find a job teaching music in school. And that seemed to make sense to me. So I kept playing the clarinet and the saxophone. I also taught the tonette or flutophone or recorder in the South Bronx, and playing, as I said, the saxophone hither and yon. Some of the gigs that I played one gig I played, it seems more recently, these parties start at 7, they end at 10, something like that. When I was playing these gigs, we started at 9 and we ended at 1. This was the standard time back in those days. So one gig I remember, we played till 1 and they said, okay, we want you to play overtime. So when we had a break during the overtime, I went over to the dessert table and I drank 2 cups of coffee because I knew that I wouldn't make it home if I hadn't. I was that tired. Also, I never drink coffee. So when I drink coffee with caffeine, I'm wired. I figured, let me make sure I get home in one piece and eventually I will recover. Another gig was at a private home, private house. We played, it was inside, wasn't outdoors. We played from 9 to 1. They're great. Okay, we're done. No, I'd like you to play another hour. So we played till 2. We got to 2. We'd like you to play another hour. We got to 3. We played until 4 in the morning. Can you imagine playing the saxophone for 7 hours? I mean, it was torture. I shouldn't say that. It was at least gave me a little bit of cash for sure. And so so as I was playing the saxophone and teaching the recorder in the South Bronx, this didn't look like a career that was heading toward being a conductor somehow. But I was very stubborn and very perseverant, and I really believed in myself that I could do this. And so I kept going. So the amount of knowledge that you need before you ever set foot on that podium is really quite substantial. And you can't, you can get up there and wing it, but it's a really bad idea. The background that you have to have is really quite something. And the public really, of course, probably has not a lot of concept of what somebody's standing up there and waving his arms around for. So, why don't we just take a moment, Trish? Can you put up that page that I sent you? Okay, so this is, can everyone see it, I assume? This is the first page of Copland's, the first movement of the suite from Rodeo called Buckaroo Holiday. So what you have on every page is the instrumentation that you're looking at. And all the instruments that are in front of you. So as you can see, the woodwind instruments are grouped at the top, and then the brass instruments, and then timpani and percussion, then celeste, and then piano, harp, and then the string section. So this is what's facing you when you start this piece. So let's take this another step. You need to understand that the notes that you're looking at may not be the sounding notes that you're going to be hearing. So certain instruments are called transposing and certain are non-transposing. So hopefully you all read music to some degree. If you can look at the first flute part and the first violin part, they're playing a C. Okay, great. The oboe is playing a C. But the English horn is playing a G. You see where it says cor anglais? Cor anglais literally means English horn. But there really is nothing English about an English horn. Really, it really probably is cor anglais, which means angled horn, because the English horn, the reed and the way it is, it's set up to go at an angle. So there's nothing English about an English horn that I'm aware of. But as I say, it's French for cor anglais, which is angled horn. So anyway, the English horn is in the key of F. Now this means when an English horn plays a C, the note that comes out is F. So conductor has to be able to look at that note and know that that G is not a G, but it's a C on the third space. All right. The F sharp is a B. The E is an A. The D is a G. So the transposition is down a fifth. Now the clarinets are in B flat. And the first note is a D, a high D for both clarinets. But this also is a transposing instrument, which means when the clarinet plays a C, the note that actually comes out is a B flat. So the first couple of notes are C, B, A, G. So it's all down a step. Now the bass clarinet doesn't play in the beginning of the piece, but the bass clarinet is in B flat. It's down a step plus an octave. But if it's German notation, it's in bass clef and it's down a step. Okay, so all I'm really describing are the many mysteries of even getting to the point where you know how to read a score. Bassoons are very nice. They don't transpose. So we're very happy for them. The horns, sometimes called French horns, and there's really nothing French about a horn as far as I know. They're descended from hunting horns, and I guess the French were big on hunting. So their first note is a written C, which is actually sounds an F. So a horn and F again, when the horn plays C, an F comes out. When an F is played, a B flat, when C is played, an F comes out, which is down a fifth. So that's horn transposition. Now trumpets are next. Trumpets can be in C, B flat, A, D, E flat, or F. So the trumpet can be a transposing instrument with a variety of keys. Now, also horns can be in E, E flat, and various keys. Now, the reason being that the harmonic series, I'm sorry if I'm boring you, but I have to let you know what it's like to look at a score. I don't have to, but I think it's hopefully interesting to see what's confronting the conductor before he or she even gets started. So trumpet and so the trumpet and horn have different parts of the instrument, which are different sizes. The old instruments, they're called crooks, and they pull out one piece of metal, can make an F horn. You put in a different piece of metal, and it becomes an E flat horn because the tube then gets smaller. Okay, so trumpet in B flat is the same as clarinet, down a step. Trombones are in C. Tuba, bass trombone, is third trombone, is also in C, but trombones sometimes read a different clef. They read alto clef or tenor clef. That's another story. All right, timpani, it's a C instrument. There are many, many kinds of percussion instruments. There are pitched percussion instruments. So you can see they're reading a clef. The other percussion instruments are just reading one line because they are not pitched. So the beginning has a cymbal crash and being played with not even a crash, it's being hit with a hard stick. Now, on top of this, many scores are written in foreign languages. So you have to know that cymbals are piatti or cinelli, depending on the country. A celeste transposes up an octave. That's a keyboard like you hear in the Nutcracker. Piano and harp, we know what those are. And now the string instruments are as you see, but the viola uses a different clef. The viola uses what's called the alto clef. So what that means is, it's hard to really see, but third line is middle C. And for the violin, the G clef means that second line is G. And then the cello and bass play F clef, and the dots are around the F in bass clef, and the contrabass, actually their notes sound an octave lower. Okay, you can take off the graphic now, Trish. Just want to make sure nobody's asleep. We're all good. Any questions, comments? Nobody? Everyone understood
I
everything.
just wanted to say, if anyone needs some music reading background, Jody Chafee, our education director, has been doing some adult music minutes on Monday. So I could give you a refresher course.
Okay, great.
Carl,
So nobody needs, yes.
yeah, this is Ron.
Hi,
I do
Ron.
play, I do play sax and clarinet, so I learned to transpose on the fly. How long did it
Right.
take you to be able to do all the instruments for you?
Mean to know what's going on?
Yeah, because you're going to have to simultaneously transpose, E flat instruments, B flat instruments, F instruments.
Right. Well, I can't say I learned it in 1 second, but when I was in my teenage years, I would play along with recordings on my clarinet with the score. And so I would learn when I saw F horn, I had to learn how to play F horn find out what notes made the F horn work. And when I look at the alto clef, um, um, you have to figure out what those notes are, and so to play along with that, and then you learn clef transposition, Ron. So if an instrument is in E flat, if you put a bass clef there, you can tell what note they're playing. So if you see a C, okay, on the alto sax, that sounds E flat. So if you put a bass clef there, that C then becomes magically an E of some sort. Now you don't know if it's flat or sharp or natural or in which octave it is, but you know it's some sort of an E. So anyway, it's just a process really, and I had sort of an epiphany or one of those moments where I realized that I was in trouble. I went to a rehearsal. I was 20 years old, and the conductor, I'm playing the clarinet, conductor gets on the podium, looks at the violin part and says, these bowings for the strings are not very good. And I'm saying they don't, whatever details of bowing, they weren't good bowings. And I'm saying to myself, I want to be a conductor. I don't know a good bowing from a bad bowing. And I better figure out pretty fast because I'm not going to be any sort of a conductor if I can't do that. So I took up the viola. And the reason I took up the viola, well, a few reasons, but one of them, well, it's easier to play in the sense they never have to go very high, which is fine by me. But the other residual reason, which is really good, is that you learn to read the alto clef better if you can play the viola. So it doesn't look like you have to do some sort of mathematical equation to figure out, oh, C, second finger on the A string, bum, 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 ba, da, ba, da, ba. And you can use your imagination a lot more easily and figure out what to do. So in music, though, you can be confronted with a huge score, and they're bigger than this, but it's all about grouping. When you look at the first bar, everyone plays what's in the first bar in one octave or another. Okay, so that's what it says. So that group, even though it looks like disparate instruments, they're playing 1, 2, 3 different octaves. Oh no, sorry, 2 different octaves. Bum, 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 beep, ba, da, ba, da, bum, C, and also the third space C. Everyone's playing that. Now the third bar, the horns and trombones, the horns, the basses and cellos are playing, and bassoons are playing a bass part. Oh, sorry, I should go back to the screen. Cellos, basses, timpani, third trombone, tuba, and bassoon are playing bob, bob, beam, bob. They're one group. The horns and the trombones are playing ba 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 ba. They're playing the melody with some harmony. Okay, Trish, we're good. So my point is that when you look at a score, it's all about grouping. It's like looking at uh, uh, a sentence and seeing letters. When you see letters, you're in a lot of trouble. If you see words, you're much better. If you see sentences, even better. So it's all about grouping. So I guess we sort of got sidetracked from a career, but it's just an indication of what you have to know when you're on the podium. And then even when you're there, there's still stuff maybe you don't know so well. I'm not really good at trombone glissandos. I don't know which ones work and which ones don't really well. Sometimes I'll ask somebody to play a glissando. I say, we can't do that. I said, well, fake it or do something close to that or come
Hey,
up with
Carl,
something.
I have a
Yes.
question. So you mentioned math. Do you consider yourself a good math person?
Very good. Up to 64. 2, 4, 6, 8, no, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 64. Those are the magic numbers. Anything above that, not good. As far as calculus or sines and cosines, that was a long time ago. But I have, but you know, the basic, when you look at a piece of music and you read it, you have to see where the beats are. And it's why I tell my students often, find out the midpoint and divide the bar in half, especially reading jazz rhythms. Here like this, you don't have to put the screen up again, but the horns play ba 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 ba. That's a jazz rhythm. And if you sort of divide the bar in half, it's a lot easier to read. Or if you have first and second beats are quarter notes and the fourth beat is a quarter note, then you know whatever's in that third beat, it's got to equal a quarter note. So it's really, it's math, but it's more logic and just common sense more than figuring out something which is beyond comprehension. Please, I beg people to ask questions, make comments. It's very, very, I don't mind doing this, but especially when everyone is muted, it's a very strange feeling because there's no one's laughing, there's no one reacting. It's like a soliloquy, you know, in the middle of the desert. So help me out, please. Or if you fake it, think of a fun question or comment or anything. So
Yeah, if you don't, I just want to mention to everyone, if you don't feel comfortable saying something out loud, you can put it in the chat box and we'll read it out loud.
I like the question about the math. And
Okay.
I like Carl's answer.
Thank you. So
I guess I'll ask a question, Carl. You talked about knowing the instruments, so that what they sound like and what they can and can't do. I assume you play every instrument at some point in time. You've learned to play every instrument that you're directing.
How anybody plays the bass is beyond me. I mean, there's so many women who play the bass who do not have particularly big hands. And I don't know how they do it. There's a lot of 1-4, 1-4, 1-4 when they're playing, I guess. But I can't play the cello or the bass at all. And but I understand a little bit about them. And I definitely understand the violin and viola. How anyone plays in the high register in the violin when everything is going on and know what notes they're playing is an absolute mystery and a marvel to me. I think it's incredible how they find those notes. I remember playing a little bit of drum set from time to time. I haven't played timpani once when I was in high school. And brass instruments, I mean, you really don't want to play a brass instrument if you're playing a woodwind because it doesn't do anything good for your chops. But, you know, when I was at doing the master's program in music ed, I had to play all the instruments, at least experience them. And how anyone plays the tuba also is the amount of air you need is amazing. Also, the conductors it's so important for conductors to understand the instruments of the orchestra. And when I ask my students which instruments expend the most air quickly or expend their air quickly, Ron, you tell me which instruments run out of air the fastest.
I really don't know, but I'm a woodwind player, but I would think the tuba, but maybe
absolutely,
not.
Absolutely. To the amount of air. that tuba player, and you see a lot of big tuba players, but I've seen some little guys and they could play. We had one guy I remember in Colorado who's in San Francisco Ballet or Opera Orchestra, and he was not a big guy at all. And so, but the tuba takes an enormous amount of air. And but ironically, on the other side of the spectrum, the flute uses air very quickly because it's just blowing into nothing. You know, when you play the clarinet, what happens is the air is going into one small aperture.
Mhm.
So I can hold that note a long time because whatever concentration of air is going into that between the reed and the mouthpiece. When you play the flute, it's like blowing into a Coke bottle because it goes fast. So flute, piccolo, bass trombone, and tuba, the two opposite spectrums of the orchestra, expend their air the fastest, and they work really, really hard to expand their capacity for breathing. I mean, when I think about the first note of Beethoven's Fourth Symphony, how a flute player can possibly hold that note for those 5 measures. And if the conductor takes a tempo, it's too slow. I mean, this flute player is just shooting daggers from their eyes at the conductor. Please give me a break. So, but these are all things the conductor needs to know about. And all the idiosyncrasies of the instruments are so important. And you stand up there and or even to know the notes and the transpositions. If the horn says to me, this note doesn't sound right, and you can't give them an answer, there's a problem. So the amount of knowledge that you have to have when you conduct is really overwhelming. And I don't know, you have to be so qualified. And even me, I stand on the podium all these years, and sometimes I say, what am I doing here? You know, like there might be something, I don't mean this in a big sense, but like, wow, I have to deal with this. And what am I going to tell the timpani player? Because whatever he's playing isn't sound right. Or gosh, what's happening with the violins? Why aren't they playing that in tune? But anyway, there's so many issues and so many problems. And I'm not meaning to say that there's just a lot coming at you. That's really what I'm saying. Where you hear something and it's obvious that something's wrong, and well, you hope it fixes itself. But then if you don't say anything, maybe people think, well, he never heard that there was a wrong note in the trumpet. So there's all sorts of conundrums that are facing you. So do you say something? Do you not say something? And then to top it all off, you have to find the right words to say. So you're not turning somebody off. You're not insulting them, but you're supporting the person. So there's so many, words that are effective, and there are techniques and strategies which just aren't. And the thing about the Fireland Symphony, which I enjoy so much, is I think that I've created a fun, hardworking atmosphere. It's not toxic. It's not contentious. People are there. They want to play. They want to have a good time. And some of them, they want to play because they know when they come, they're treated with respect, and they get food in between the rehearsal and the concert. Wow. I mean, really. And they appreciate that. And so there are so many layers. And I guess the days of the tyrannical conductor, you hear about Toscanini throwing things at people. Well, I don't know if he did that, but insulting people and all this sort of stuff. And when I hear my colleagues doing this, it just turns me off. There's no reason whatsoever. There's a right way and a wrong way to say everything. And, I tell my students also, don't say this should be like this, because maybe someone else doesn't say it should be, but you can say, let's do this, or we can make a really nice sound if we play this way, or let's not cover the woodwind solo, rather than it should be softer, or something like that. So there's so many layers of being a conductor, which go so far beyond, you can know this, every note of a score, but if you don't know how to treat people, you have any common sense, it's not the sort of atmosphere that I want to be around. So where were we? We were back.
Carl,
Yes,
I'll bug you on one more question. I guess
please.
maybe it's a two-part question. How do you decide the music as far as the difficulty of it? I assume you know all the players' abilities that you're going to have in the orchestra. And the second part of the question is if in fact you blew it and there's a couple of members in the orchestra that can't play it, do you ever dumb down their parts to make it work?
I'm pretty careful about what I program. But I have had, I remember my last concert, Cleveland Institute of Music, I programmed this overture by Samuel Barber. And I start rehearsing, I said, oh my God, this was going to take way more time than I thought it did or would. And it came out fine, but I sort of miscalculated the difficulty. Another time, a friend of mine wrote a piece that we played, I put it on the concert, and I had another very difficult piece on the program. And I just sort of didn't realize how hard this piece was. So you have to learn how to rehearse. The whole tempo of the rehearsal has to be really, really carefully done. But once you cross the Rubicon, you got to put up with it. And whatever comes out, you don't want to say to somebody, I have to put somebody else on the part, because that's bad. That's really difficult. And you don't want to have to. I was actually taken off a part once. And the person was right. It was a staccato passage that I didn't have the physical wherewithal to play fast enough. So they took me off the part, which was only 5,000 years ago. But you remember that. So you never want to be in the position to say, uh-oh, I shouldn't have put this part in because the so-and-so player isn't capable of doing it. So that's something to be aware of. And with my nature, Ron, I guess I would just say, okay, we're going to find our way through this. And if it's not played perfectly in tune, if there are difficulties, we'll just run with it and have it happen. On the other hand, if I programmed the piece with a community orchestra here in Cleveland, we had a wonderful concertmaster. So I picked a piece that had a big violin solo, and she did great, and she was very happy. And it also had a big cello solo. And fortunately, the cellist was capable, and the violinist was actually the only one being paid in the community orchestra. But fortunately, the cellist was also fine. So we found our way through that. So it's a bit of a line mine that you are walking through. I'm sorry, I tend to give very long answers to sometimes very simple questions. So I apologize if I rambled.
I like to hear that. And to Ron's question, I'd say, I don't know that much about music. I just love music. But in Carl's early years with the Violin Symphony, I would say there's been an immense progression toward more difficult and difficult music. So he does like to challenge our musicians without a doubt. And I think they appreciate that.
Well, and you're right, because in the early days, there are pieces we absolutely could not play.
No.
But as the orchestra evolved, and when we played Firebird Suite, that was a big test for us. And then Beethoven Ninth Symphony. And now we're playing Saint-Saëns Third Symphony, pictures at an exhibition, and some really tough repertoire. But the orchestra's been able to cut it really quite well and do a good job. But that's all part of it. And the experience that you gather over the year, one example I like to use, Dvorak's 8th and 9th Symphony, 8th and the New World Symphony, wonderful pieces. A lot of orchestras can manage them pretty well. If you don't have a top-notch orchestra, don't try the 7th Symphony, because it's really much harder. Even though it's the same composer, it's just harder to play. And you learn which pieces work and which pieces don't work for certain ensembles. And so you have to be really sensitive. And I like to say, if you're going to conduct a new orchestra and you don't know their ability, pick something which is not going to be, there's a lot of great music, which is not as hard to play. But, when we did, in the early days, we did Mendelssohn's Fifth Symphony. And it has its difficulties, but it's not impossible. But now we could probably do the Third Symphony, which is much harder. So anyway, it's all part of this whole progression of figuring out how to program, work to your strengths, and find something that's appealing to the orchestra, to the audience, to the conductor as well, and make it all work.
I wanted to mention,
Okay,
Carl, at the beginning, when I was playing music, it was from January 2010. It was a recording on WGTE of your concert, Let's Dance.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if you heard that when you came in, but yeah. So I'll be playing from that for each of the sessions now.
Oh, well, I heard the Bacchanal from Samson Delilah, but I didn't know that that was our orchestra.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
And you missed
impressive.
it because the first piece you were on clarinet solo. So
I know. The program was called, well, that's the cool thing, by the way, about the Fireland Symphony. I could do anything I want, which is sort of cool. I don't mean this I'm bragging or anything, but that's the wrong way to say it. I can be innovative. That's a much better way to say that I can do whatever I damn please. But I can be, who would start a concert playing, which is Let's Dance by Benny Goodman. All right. I mean, it's pretty weird. I mean, can you imagine going to a Severance Hall concert to hear the Cleveland Orchestra, and the concert starts with the clarinet, with the conductor coming out and playing a Benny Goodman song on the clarinet. But with Firelands, not only can you do it, but the audience thinks it's pretty cool. And that's a lot of fun. And that's been just great for me. And that's one of the reasons that I've enjoyed working with the orchestra so much, because you can do stuff. You can do organ piece where the organist is watching the screen and improvising, and the audience can see him. When we did the Saint-Saëns Third Symphony, we had Bugs Bunny or and he was improvising on the organ. Be able to watch that, I thought it was fascinating. And so anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. There was a question on the chat.
yeah.
Do you see it?
Yes.
Trish?
How do you select the people who play in your orchestra, and do they try out for every concert? Are they all from our area?
Okay, that's a very good question. How do I judge them? Very carefully. And so each year before we had the latest the pandemic now, every year I would hold auditions in September at Oberlin, Cleveland Music, and also at Firelands at Sandusky for incoming players. These players would be hired for the entire year as either permanent positions when we had an opening, or or to be on our substitute list, because the players we use come only from our area, but the surrounding area is quite large. So we may have somebody who also plays in the Lima Symphony or in the Akron Symphony, and it's part of what we call the Freeway Philharmonic. We have our core players, and they've been who play just about all the time. And then we have some fluid situations, especially in the string sections. But our winds are pretty constant. And once somebody is in a position, there have been circumstances where people have either been they've retired on their own at times, or they've realized that, okay, maybe I should do a different chair in the orchestra, or modify my commitment or whatever I do. So that's happened, and we've been it's worked out pretty well, actually. And people are sensitive, and you have to go back the best you can in the most humane way possible. But change is going to happen, and it has. And our orchestra is just getting better and better. And I'm really happy with the progress we've made and the type of music we can program. Again, a very long answer to a question.
Carl, I guess that begs the question. If you have, let's say, a critical part and that person turns out sick, what do you do?
Find someone equally good. Once in a while, if a second player is capable, that person can move up and cover the part. If not, we're so fortunate we have a lot of talent in our area. And when I conducted in Anchorage, Alaska, they had to fly in an oboe player from Juneau, which is really far, but we wouldn't have that situation here. So we're blessed with a lot of talent, and there are a lot of players who are, I'm very comfortable moving into first chair from second chair, and some not. And where I would definitely get someone to take somebody's place. But it's worked out well. Another consideration, if I have two people auditioning for, let's say, one particular position, and one of them is a member of the community, and the other one is a student who may be gone in a year or two, as long as the person of the community can really play, I will always take that person. I think a great example is Angie Hunter, our second trombone, who lived in Germany for many years. She came back to the area. She's a very good player. And there may have been some hotshot Overland kid or CIM kid who was also good, but Angie's been great. She plays every concert, and that's who we want in our orchestra. So that's another decision that has to be weighed. If the local person is not a good player, then I'm afraid that I have to go with potentially an itinerant student. So, I don't have my watch with me. I don't know what time it is.
It's 7:44.
Oh, okay. Well, like I said before, maybe it's a good place to stop.
Okay.
In a sense, we didn't get very far, but on the other hand, hopefully the subjects we did discuss were interesting. Thank you for all of you who participated, because I really would like to encourage participation as much as possible, and comments, questions, anything that else that comes along. And I thank you all for listening and your support, and we'll continue and hopefully get a little further down the line past teaching the recorder in the South Bronx and go to the next step.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. My pleasure. Always a lot of fun for me to be with
Great
you.
conversation tonight. I really
Yes.
enjoyed that.
Everyone, stay well, please. Stay well. See you in person as soon as possible.